1984 Ronald Reagan's landslide victory. In 1984, Ronald Reagan, the incumbent, won an overwhelming 525 electoral votes, one of the most significant landslides in U.S. history. Reagan 58 won an 80% of the popular vote, leading with his message of optimism and economic recovery. The economy was booming, with a GDP growth rate of 7.2%, although unemployment was still at 7.5%, recovering from earlier highs. Reagan's victory showed a strong endorsement of his "Morning in America" philosophy. 1988 George H.W. Bush. And continuing Reagan's legacy, the 1988 election brought George H.W. Bush into office, a continuation of Reagan's legacy. Bush won 426 electoral votes and 53.4% of the popular vote, promoting a vision of American strength and stability. The economy grew at 4.1%, and unemployment dropped to 5.3%, signaling confidence in the Reagan-era policies that Bush pledged to maintain. 1992 The Clinton era begins, but 1992 brought a shift. Bill Clinton, the young governor from Arkansas, won with 370 electoral votes, taking 43% of the popular vote. The economy was the focal point of his campaign, summarized in the famous line, "It's the economy, stupid." The GDP grew at a modest 3.6%, but unemployment was high at 7.4%. Voters were ready for a fresh approach to tackle economic challenges and bring new energy into the White House. 1996 Clinton's re-election. 4 years later, in 1996, Clinton was re-elected with an even stronger showing of 379 electoral votes. This time, he took nearly 50% of the popular vote, supported by a steadily growing economy. GDP growth was 4.4%, and the unemployment rate was 5.4%. With the economy on an upswing and the internet revolution just beginning, Americans felt secure enough to re-elect Clinton for another term. Bush versus Gore controversy. The 2000 election between George W. Bush and Al Gore was one of the closest, and most controversial, in American history. Bush ultimately won with 271 electoral votes, despite losing the popular vote by a narrow margin. The economy was stable, with a 4.1% growth rate and only a 4% unemployment rate. The events that followed, including the 9/11 attacks and the subsequent wars, would dominate Bush's presidency and lead to major economic and political challenges. Bush's narrow re-election. In 2004, Bush was re-elected with 286 electoral votes and 50.7% of the popular vote. The economy was still recovering from the early 2000s recession, and GDP grew at 3.5% with unemployment at 5.5%. Despite criticisms of his foreign policy, Bush maintained enough support to secure a second term, emphasizing national security and moral values. 2008 The Obama wave. In 2008, Barack Obama made history as the first African American president. Obama won 365 electoral votes and 52.9% of the popular vote during a time of deep economic crisis. GDP had actually contracted by 0.1%, and unemployment was on the rise at 7.3%, amid the Great Recession. Obama's message of hope and change resonated with voters, who were looking for a new direction and an economic recovery plan. 2012 Obama's second term. By 2012, Obama was re-elected with 332 electoral votes and 51.1% of the popular vote. The economy was recovering slowly, with a 2.2% GDP growth rate and a 7.8% unemployment rate. Although it was a slower recovery than many hoped for, voters still placed their trust in Obama's leadership, prioritizing steady growth over drastic change. 2016 Donald Trump's unexpected victory. The 2016 election was a shock for many. Donald Trump won with 304 electoral votes, though he had just 46.1% of the popular vote. The economy was relatively stable, with 1.6% GDP growth and a low 4.7% unemployment rate. Trump's message of "Make America Great Again" tapped into voter dissatisfaction and a desire for change, especially among working-class Americans who felt left behind by globalization. 2020 Joe Biden and a pandemic-era election, and finally 2020. Joe Biden won with 306 electoral votes and 51.3% of the popular vote. The COVID-19 pandemic had severely impacted the economy, with a negative GDP growth rate of 3.4% and unemployment at 8.1%. Biden's promise to address the pandemic and restore stability resonated with voters.